Welcome to Into the Woods, a journey with the tarot. Here, we wander together into the woods to explore ourselves, the world around us, and the mysteries and joys of life through the tarot. I'm your host, Mari, a professional tarot reader and a musician. Grab your deck, and off we go. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Into the Woods. Today, we're continuing our series, Animals in the Tarot, where we deep dive into the symbolic meanings of the animals that appear in the cards. So far, we've covered dogs in episode 8 and horses in episode 11. Today, we're going to talk about lions, which appear in 6 cards in the tarot. And I thought this would be cool timing because right now we have the Sun, Jupiter, Mercury, and the South Node all in the astrological sign of Leo, our lion in the stars. And so a lot of the themes related to lions as a symbol are really relevant right now. And on that note, let me just get through a couple announcements. So I am offering tarot readings and Reiki tarot combo sessions at my home, or of course, tarot can just be online. You can book a session with me on my website, mariofthewoods.com. That's M-A-R-I for Mari. And I'm really excited. I'm currently working on a sort of a workshop and meditation experience. I'm calling it Releasing Leo, a past life regression experience, inspired by the South Node currently in Leo. The North and South nodes in astrology are points of fate or destiny. The North Node showing us sort of where we're heading, and the South Node showing us baggage we've brought in from past lives and ancestry. So in this workshop, we're going to go over the themes of Leo, the shadow side of Leo, what it means with the South Node in Leo, and then I'm going to guide you through a past life regression with the intention of accessing a lifetime where you have something to learn from this archetype of Leo. So that's going to be available on my website as a pre-recorded workshop. I'm also hoping to maybe do an in-person version of this here in the Seattle area. So definitely keep an eye on my social media, Mari of the Woods on Instagram and TikTok. Also, I have an email list where you can stay up to date about all these offerings as well. You can join my newsletter on my website, mariofthewoods.com, from the contact page. Okay, that's all for the announcements. Let's get into our episode on lions. If you are working with a Rider-Waite-Smith deck or a Rider-Waite-Smith inspired deck, you will find lions on the Strength card, the Wheel of Fortune, and the World in the Major Arcana, and then the Two of Cups and the Queen and King of Wands in the Minor Arcana. So maybe you, like me, grew up with the Lion King and know lions as the king of the jungle. And whether this is true for you or not, humans have long been in awe of the regal, majestic, and bold lion. There are cave drawings of lions from 32,000 years ago in France. How cool is that? And we know them for their dramatic manes, their impressive roar, and their gorgeous golden fur. As the Taschen Book of Symbols says, quote, conveying protective grace and noble authority, they have inspired everything from warrior societies and shamanic magic to some of our oldest, most commanding images of majestic divinity, end quote. So yes, lions are a real showy symbol with lots of majesty and firepower. They're a symbol of courage, strength, and boldness. They are closely tied to the sun as a symbol. And because of that, we also see them tied to the theme of resurrection and rebirth a lot, which I think is really interesting. For example, Simba in The Lion King is sort of a resurrection story. Everyone thought he was dead, and then he comes back to save the day. Aslan from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, of course, is such a good example. Another lion that comes back to save the day in the end. And actually, the lions on the funerary bed of King Tut are said to be an emblem of resurrection because of their association with the sun as well. I'm going to read a little bit of a longer portion now from the Taschen Book of Symbols. Quote, Lions, regal dignitaries inhabiting savannas and traveling in prides, are the most social of the great cats. Their tawny coats and luxuriant mane of the male, circling his head like the radiant nimbus of the sun. His fierce pacing guardianship of territory and pride, and the female's prowess as hunter and mother associate the lions with gold, solar splendor, heroic survival, and the sun-like magnanimity and compassion of savior and sovereign. Great cats are wild cats. They can devour. And whether we are speaking of the gorgeous animals or the vital powers within ourselves that they embody, big cats need space, habitat, and respect for the value and force of their living presence in nature, end quote. So, of course, that last bit about the vital powers within ourselves is often what we are working with in our tarot interpretations. Obviously, we're not talking about literal lions. Some other important keywords that I'm going to grab from this excerpt from Taschen are social, the sun, territorial, pride, hunters, heroic, savior, sovereign, grace, noble authority. And then from an earlier section in Taschen that I didn't read, we get the words strength, elegance, and sensuality. So I think all of those are great keywords to bring into the cards that have lions to sort of paint a picture of the figures that we're seeing in the cards and what's happening in the cards. I think it's pretty easy to apply these traits and keywords to the King and Queen of Wands, especially. Both members of the tarot royalty can be considered quite proud, strong, graceful, social, certainly, inspirational, heroic even. They demand space and respect. And since female lions are the hunters, we can apply that perhaps to our tarot queen as well. We might see her as a fierce provider for her community and a protector of the young. We also can't forget that lions do tend to steal the show, right? They're really dramatic as far as big cats go, right? The King and Queen of Wands, therefore, might be highly visible, or maybe they are people who are seeking that kind of adoration and recognition and beauty. Shadow sides of our Wands royalty might be vanity, too much pride, narcissism, being overbearing, aggressive, dominating, basically those lion qualities, but just taken to an extreme level. Or maybe they're just too loud, like the lions roar. I wanted to start with the core cards because I actually think they are the easiest to work with as far as the lion symbol. And in both those cards, we see the lion on their throne. Now we're going to look at the Wheel of Fortune and the World. And I'm lumping these two cards together because if you notice, they both have the same four figures in the same four corners of the card. These figures, the angel, eagle, bull, and lion, can represent the four evangelists in Christianity or the four fixed zodiac signs. So if you listened last week, I explained that the four fixed zodiac signs in astrology are the signs that fall in the middle of each season of the year. And so we see the angel for the sign of Aquarius, the eagle for Scorpio. I know that's kind of a weird one. If you're not familiar, there's actually three symbols for Scorpio. In addition to the scorpion, we have the eagle and the phoenix. Then we see the bull for Taurus and the lion for Leo. So we're seeing a direct reference to astrology and the zodiac sign of Leo. So let's take a moment to talk about Leo and the archetype of Leo. So the constellation for Leo, of course, is a lion in the stars. The ruling planet of Leo is, of course, the sun. And Leo is associated with strength, confidence, charisma, compassion, leadership, creativity, self-expression, warmth, and affection. So they love to share their gifts and light with others. They love for other people to bask in their sunlight. The darker side of Leo is, again, that vanity, the self-centeredness, and pride. So all Leo traits and energy can be tied into the lion cards as well. But in these two cards, the wheel and the world, it's actually not really about the individual traits of Leo, but rather the shared traits of all the fixed signs and how they relate as a group to the wheel in the Wheel of Fortune and to the wreath and the world dancer in the world card. The fixed signs all share qualities of preservation, stability, and dependability. They are solidly in the middle of their season. So they're not transitioning in or transitioning out. Leo is sort of like dead in the middle of the summer. We're definitely in shorts and sandals weather, and no question of whether summer has arrived or not. We're all frolicking in the pool. So in the Wheel of Fortune, those fixed signs are playing the opposite energy of the wheel. If the wheel is spinning and spinning and taking us through the high highs and the low lows in life, then the four figures in the corners are an anchor of sorts. They could represent points of stillness in the chaos. They could be moments of presence. They could be saying to us, the one thing that stays the same is constant change. Or maybe since they all seem to be reading books, if you look closely, all of them have a book in their lap, they represent the neutral observers, learning as they watch the fluctuations of life. In the world, these fixed signs seem more in flow with the world dancer, who has learned all the lessons of the major arcana. The Wheel of Fortune is card number 10, so a little earlier on in the journey. The world is our final card, number 22. So the fixed signs here are reduced to just their heads. There's no wings, there's no books. It's a little simpler and cleaner representation. There's less complication and detail. The world dancer has the ability to dance through the changes of life with grace and joy. They are present as time flows by and find stability and rhythm, even with no ground beneath their feet. So they have those supporting fixed signs there to point us in that direction of stability amongst change. The figure in the card seems to be standing on solid ground, but if you look, they're just floating in midair. So it's this really interesting sort of exchange of freedom with stability, change with presence. And I think that's, we see that in that combination of this free figure floating in the sky combined with the fixed signs in the corners. Let's look at the Strength card next. This is one of those cards that can seem so simple, but maybe isn't exactly what it seems. It reminds me a bit of the Lovers. I did a reading for someone where we pulled this card and they immediately saw the word strength or just read it and took it as the need to power through. I could tell wherever they were in their life, they were sort of overwhelmed or just feeling a little frazzled, and seeing the Strength card, they were just like, oh God, okay, I guess I just have to be strong and power through. And I felt so bad. I'm like, no, that's not what the card means. So I had to point out that the woman in the card is not wrestling the lion with her huge muscles like Heracles and the Nemean lion of Greek myth. She's not even standing opposite the lion. She's standing by its side and is closing its mouth gently with her hands. There's a sense that they are working together, kind of. The lion, though roaring, is not in an all-out struggle and surely would trample her if it wanted to. And she is not trying to overpower the lion, but is simply guiding it and almost has a smile on her face or, a very peaceful expression. So this card does not indicate the need to power through with brute force, but rather calls for a balance of forces. The wild, proud, roaring lion who demands to be heard and insists on being in charge must meet the gentle woman in white who is soft and civilized. I believe this card is really about knowing yourself, which, all the cards kind of are, but, doing the inner work so that the impossibly strong lion within us who might act out of a need for attention, recognition, territorialism, so that lion doesn't always win the battle, but it's not a complete submission either. The lion isn't slain or caged. So I think it's really interesting, the dynamic in this card. It comes down to what the lion brings up for you, right? What do you see as your inner lion? Which of the traits, the stories are resonating with you when you see this card? The astrological correspondent is, of course, Leo for this card. So perhaps it could be seen as balancing the light and dark aspects of that Leo archetype too. I want to bring in two stories from mythology that might also help our understanding of this card and maybe all the lion cards. We'll see. The first is the story of Thecla from the 2nd century text, Acts of Paul and Thecla. So Thecla hears the teachings of Paul, guess like Christianity Paul, and wants to follow him and study with him instead of marrying her fiance, which I'm sure was arranged. So this makes her family and community leaders super pissed. She is condemned to be burned at the stake. She disguises herself and goes to find Paul, but essentially ends up getting assaulted by another man in her effort to see him. He forces himself on her. And when she fights back, she, is clawing at him and ripping his clothing. She is eventually caught and then sentenced to be eaten by wild animals in an arena. Oh my. So once she's actually in the arena, the women in the crowd cry out in protest. They throw herbs and spices and flowers to distract the animals. And when the animals are actually released, everyone is amazed that a lioness chooses to protect Thecla and licks her feet. That's in the story. It dies defending her from another lion and a bear. And in the end, Thecla ends up baptizing herself, which Paul had earlier refused to do for her. The story obviously has a lot more detail. It's a really interesting tale. But throughout, Thecla shows incredible self-control and stays really true to her truth, her values, her desires, and her beliefs. And I think that's sort of like the key to this card, is that it's not really about this sort of brute force. It's actually about self-control and staying really true to what you value and what's healthy for you. After her, display of self-control and et cetera, she's rewarded by the wild lioness choosing to ally with her, right? She sort of tamed a wild beast and brought them on her side. It's also just a really cool, rare Christian story about a woman and other women supporting a woman. And of course, it wasn't accepted into the Bible, which is like a whole nother thing, but kind of a fascinating tale. And the imagery, that comes to me when I hear this story reminds me so much of the Strength card. The other myth is that of the Egyptian deity Sekhmet. She has the body of a woman and the head of a lion and is the daughter of the sun god Ra. She was known to breathe fire, brought plagues as punishment to humans. She was a total badass. She was very rageful and bloodthirsty, lots of feminine rage there. But she was also called upon to ward off disease and perform healings. So she's a goddess of both destruction and healing. We see this play, again, of opposite forces, the lion as the beast and the destroyer, the woman perhaps as the healer. So in one famous story about Sekhmet, she is sent by Ra to basically fuck up some humans who were plotting against him. And in her rage, she becomes so bloodthirsty that she basically won't stop, killing and destroying people. So the gods are like, oh shit, we got to stop her. So they empty out a lake. They fill it up with beer. They dye it red so that it looks like blood. And when she sees it, she drinks it all, becoming drunk and ending her rampage. And apparently Egyptians held a festival of intoxication for a long time where they would drink tons of beer and wine to imitate the drunkenness that stopped the wrath of the goddess Sekhmet. So this might be a cautionary tale of letting the lion be fully in control. I'm not sure, but maybe there's a connection here between feminine rage and lions. It seems to be the case for both Sekhmet and Thecla. In Thecla's story, it was specifically a female lion who came to defend her. Yay for angry females teaming up for the win. Maybe that lion represents all of our collective female rage, and then the woman is like, okay, ladies, don't just fuck this up and be really mean and poison everybody, but use that rage to create a beautiful future for everybody. Okay, new interpretation for the Strength card. You're welcome. Okay, so we're going to finish up by looking at the Two of Cups. In the Two of Cups, we see two figures, a man and a woman, holding hands and gazing intently at one another. And above them is a head of a lion with wings. So firstly, I just want to say that Arthur Edward Waite, the creator of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, was completely useless in my research. About this symbol, the lion with the wings, he says, quote, "It is a variant of a sign which is found in a few old examples of this card. Some curious emblematical meanings are attached to it, but they do not concern us in this place," end quote. Cool. Thanks. So a little more helpful in Rachel Pollack's book, 78 Degrees of Wisdom, she says, quote, "The card shows how two people, by uniting their separate qualities and abilities through love, produce something in their lives beyond what either would have achieved alone. The lion symbolizes sexuality, the wings, spirit. Love gives a greater meaning to the sexual drive that leads us to it," end quote. So now perhaps we see that the tempering of the lion's traits is done by the wings in this card instead of by the woman in white. It is the wings that represent that transformation of the lion's traits, right? Sensuality, boldness, territorialism, even the sexual drive, into something spiritual, love. I also think that it takes great bravery to fall in love or just commit to a deep friendship even. And the lion can represent that courage and boldness that's needed to really allow yourself to be deeply seen, right? It's really vulnerable. It requires a lot of vulnerability to maintain deep relationships. And that sort of like braveness and dedication feels very Leo to me. All right, so hopefully this has given you a little bit more to chew on when you pull cards that have a lion on it, and have just added some depth to the way you think about lion as a symbol and connections to mythology and all that. It's been really fun for me to do this research and look into animals as a symbol. So I will continue with this series. I'm not sure what's going to be next. I'm excited to keep going with it. I would love to hear what you guys think of the animal episodes, if you're enjoying them, and if you have any other kinds of series you might be interested in or have other questions about the cards. So feel free to contact me via email. My email is info@mariofthewoods.com. Mari is spelled Mari. And of course, you can also find me on Instagram and TikTok at Mari of the Woods. Until next time, happy wandering.